right, I'm going to show you how to do a landscape with colored pencil. It's a little bit difficult, but we're going to give it a shot. Show some texture, some depth, and perspective in this one. I hope you enjoy. What is up, blind viewers? All right, we are going to do landscape in colored pencil. Going to do some perspective, some depth, and just have some fun with it. Now, landscapes are a little bit difficult with colored pencil. I mean, when it comes to doing landscapes and textures and all that, doing it in oil or acrylic or some other medium like that where you can use a brush and paint to actually do things, it's a lot easier. But I'm going to see what I can do. This is kind of new territory for me, but I'm going to attempt it. I'm going to put a big old tree right up front in your face in the foreground, and then another tree off into the distance to show a little bit of perspective here. So let's see what I can do. We're going to do an autumn scene too, so I'm going to make it a little bit even more interesting with lots of textures and color. And I don't know. Well, we'll see how it turns out. It's going to be quite interesting, I think. I'm kind of mapping out the foliage of the background tree. And again, I said this is an autumn scene, so we have several shades of greens. We got oranges, yellows, reds, and it's a very time-consuming process, so I skipped ahead a lot, or this video would have been an hour long. This took me several days. It's a lot of tedious little squiggles. Squiggle, squiggle, squiggle here and there. Now, if you do like oil paintings or anything, you usually go dark and then you come lighter on top, and you got these layers and you put light, and you can do highlights on top and all that other stuff. But when you're working with colored pencil, if you put the darkest color, say for instance that red, if I put that red down first and then try to go with the mid-tone of like two different oranges and then put the yellow or the yellow orange as highlight on top, it won't work. It'll turn to mud. Unless between every layer, I would put something down, some kind of barrier or medium, so I can actually go on top of that instead of the color. So I have to map out the thing a little bit and go lights and go up to the darkest. So kind of in reverse mode of if you're using oils or something like that. Now I'm going to move to the tree in the foreground. I do get the majority of the foliage of the tree there in the distance, but not all of it. So it's just the way I work with my brain. I get tired of doing something. It's like everything. I do something for a while and I get tired of it and I do something else. And then I go back to that later. But yeah, I got tired of doing all the little squiggles and trying to put all these little, not every single little leaf, but kind of like leaf patterns. So when you look at it, it looks like a bunch of foliage. So I decided I would jump to this tree in the foreground, which is going to get lots and lots of detail because it is right there in your face. You're looking at it and then past it off into the distance. So we're going to do that forced perspective thing and put that thing that's in the foreground nice and dark, but with lots and lots of detail, as much detail as I can get into it. And then as it goes off into the distance, less detail, but lighter and brighter off in the distance. And then the other thing I have to do is here I have to combat the overlapping colors and things that are going to happen. Like right now, putting leaves, big giant leaves on this tree up close in your face in the foreground. And they're going to blend and mesh with the tiny little clumps of leaves that are off in the distance. So I had to keep that in mind, but it's kind of fun. And again, it's lots of layers. If you noticed, I put down the that latest yellowy orange, real bright yellowy orange, and then a light orange, then a deeper orange, and then a red on those leaves to get them to where they are at this time. Now I'm just going in and doing all the fine details on this trunk. Very cool tree. I did use a photo reference. I used several actually, but I did not draw them exact as I saw. It was just, again, it's a photo reference. Most of this one did come from my head, my imagination, with the inspiration of several photo references. So I could take a little bit of this from this one and a little bit of that from that one and make a tree, and then a little bit of this picture, a little bit of that, a little bit of that scene, a little bit of this, and kind of threw a bunch of things together to come up with this drawing that I'm doing. And they're doing some more leaves so you can see that yellow goes down first, and then the oranges, and then the red, and then blend it all out. All right, now we're going to move off into the distance to this little tree here, and we're going to put a little seating bench, a little bench around the tree. This was kind of fun. Shows a little bit more of the dimension and perspective, and this is going to allow me to show light and shadows and have some light breaks coming through the leaves down through onto the bench and onto the trunk of the tree, and have some shadows cast from the bench, from the legs. Not only does it show depth and perspective, but it's also going to show light source. And so drop in these shadows and all that. Now we're going to sprinkle some leaves around. Again, this is an autumn or fall scene. And here's where I was trying to figure out, how can I actually make some grass texture without spending all day doing little up and down squiggles or whatever. So I was giving it a shot. And with everything, it's always throw down a lighter color and then go on top darker and darker and darker, build it up to what you need. But in the foreground, or on the right side, this is where the sun's going to be coming in mainly. So back behind the tree, it's going to cast a shadow, of course. So I'm going to use a darker green back there, a lighter green up front, and try to get all the shadows and the light source direction. Now again, more foreground leaves, the big leaves in the foreground on the tree that we can see right up front. Before I finish up the foliage on the tree that's in the background. And even with the big tree in the foreground, if you notice, there's like little highlights here and there on the branches. Of course, on the underneath of the branch, it's going to be real dark, but up top, just in spots, not everywhere, like little breaks in the leaves that fell, and so the sun's peeking through and just skimming the tops of certain branches. So we're going to leave them highlighted while we leave the underneath nice and dark. Different variations, even on the main trunk. There's that one side of the face of the tree where the sun can kind of get through the branches and the missing leaves and light it up, while other parts are going to stay a little bit darker. And then we have all the creases and recesses. Right now here we're going to drop in some more leaves that fell off the tree. Going to drop them all over. And if you'd notice, I put in that little the break from this is going to be the mode area, and then that little line that goes off onto the horizon is going to be like a wild tall grasses and weeds and whatnot is going to be over there, like an unmowed patch. So we're going to have the separation of the mowed, manicured, taken care of lawn and the kind of wild spot over there. And there we go. I threw in the grass and a bunch of leaves underneath the tree. And now I'm going to put in a couple little wild flowery weed type things right there in that little spot. And we're going to start working on this unmowed crazy patch over here of all the wild weeds and little plants and tall grasses and what have you. I think it kind of turned out pretty good and conveyed what I was trying to get to. You know, you got that little line there that where you always mow, and then the wildness just takes over. Yeah, also way back in the background, you can see I decided I was going to pop in a couple little mountains way off into the distance past our little horizon line there that we have. Now I'm working on that cast shadow from the tree. Nice little dark patch there that tree is casting a nice shadow. Now I'm kind of just throwing in the sky, and the sky is going to be nice and light blue with little wisps of white, kind of like a hazy white, light blue at the bottom. And as we go up closer to the top, it's going to get darker and darker. And not a real, not like a midnight blue or anything, but it's going to be a lot darker up at the top of the paper than it is down at the horizon line. And basically throw in a light blue and then go over it with, work from the top down with varying shades of blue, and then blend it all out, blend it together, and it all falls together. All right, now we're getting close to the end. I got the white gouache where I'm throwing all the little highlights on, which again gives it that illusion of the sun hitting the edges of some of the leaves and breaking through the foliage onto the bench and onto the trunks of the trees, highlighting some of the other leaves that are out front, which brings them out and pushes the darker ones back in a little bit when you look at it, so it looks like they're facing out and sticking towards you as some of the other ones kind of sink back in towards the center of the tree. I know it's kind of hard to see on the drawing, on a video, but there you go. It's all done. Not the greatest, but I was pretty happy with it. It was a long project. I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it too. And there you go. Thanks for watching. This is BlindViews, and that's the way I see it.
What we do here is go back.